Hey there, everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Eric Robertson, and I work as a life coach, a business coach, a therapist, educational psychologist, and a healer. And I've spent the last 25 years doing assignments in the social healthcare services, working for people who are mentally and physically impaired, working for impoverished or troubled youth, and also doing trainings, team coaching for various companies, small and large, both national and international. I've chaired educational committees. I've written 2 books about which I'm going to talk to you in a little bit. And life was not always this good. So I would like to go back in time with you and talk about my childhood trauma, the dysfunctional youth and childhood I had, and my growing up through drugs, alcohol, depression, addiction, and finally my spiritual quest and my spiritual journey. And I do so in the hope that it'll bring you some healing, some comfort, perhaps some feeling of not being alone. This is the first for me. It's not a professional studio. As you can see, I'm in this holiday home, and I took off the glasses because they're to save you a little bit from the reflection. So, back to the 60s. My parents are from Holland, and my mom had survived the Indonesian concentration camps, or I should rather say the Japanese concentration camps in Indonesia, excuse me. When you do professional videos, which I'll hopefully get to, then you can edit all of this out, so bear with me. And so she came to Holland with a big trauma, and obviously the concentration camps were no picnic. And just a little side note, because it's kind of in nowadays in quote unquote conscious circles to absolutely deny everything. I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, but they're flat earthers. They deny the earth is round. There are people who deny the Holocaust ever took place. There are people who say that history is all fake. Well, I know from firsthand the Japanese concentration camps were real in Indonesia, believe you me. Anyway, so she met a Dutch fellow, being, the father gave birth to this physical body. They fell in love, and they tried to have a baby, and this baby boy was born. 1 or 2 days he lived. This was before the manifestation of this physical body, and he died. So you can imagine the trauma, my poor mom, and so she was terrified and going through a lot of anguish. And Dad pretty much chickened out and thought that was kind of a sign from God that they weren't meant to be together. So he started fooling around with other women. So there you have the imprint. So then again, Mom got pregnant again with this, yours truly here. And I was born in Amsterdam. And then shortly after I was born, Dad got a job working for the Foreign Service, which is basically also known as the diplomatic service. And basically it just means you're a civil servant abroad. You're not Bratchik. Anyway, so they moved to Japan. So can you imagine? So Mom has, been in the concentration camps with the Japanese, who were brutal. Mankind is brutal, but they were really nasty. And so she has to go to Japan. So anyway, long story short, we lived there for 6.5 years. Dad would be screwing around with other women. Mother would be at home petrified, feeling unloved. I felt unloved. I was absorbing all the tension. From as little on as I can remember, whenever my parents were fighting, I would jump in to soothe the quarrel, so it was very, very horrible upgrowing, very unsafe. And yes, I acknowledge that I had a lot of blessings. I am aware that there are many, many worse ways that one can grow up, for sure. But mine was horrible in its own way for me. So then when I was 2 years old, my parents had a baby girl, my sister. And the thing is, in Japan, she actually looked kind of Japanese. So she had dark hair, a little bit slanted eyes. And the Japanese adored her because she was very cute. And with me, they were kind of like, because if you believe in such thing as old souls, definitely an old soul. So we had like one or two nannies who actually ran away because they were like, oh, your son is not a boy, he's a grown up man. And, they're freaking out. Anyway, so whereas I was very cute, of course, like all children are cute. So anyway, so then after that, my parents moved to Norway when I was about 6.5. And then we lived there for another 6 years. And Norway was beautiful. I mean, the nature there is amazing. For those of you who know it, it's truly magical. And I mean, in hindsight, I was so lucky. We could actually drink the water we were swimming in a lake. Can you imagine that? I mean, there's drinking from brooks and, mountain brooks and what have you. But this was swimming in the lake, drinking the water, like a dog, like lapping it up. And it was that pure and clean. Anyway, the hell continued. Dad and mom were always fighting. Dad would beat up my mother. I couldn't sleep at night because all night I'd be, lying in bed listening, thinking, oh, is that going to attack mom? So I have to go in there and rescue her. Went through horrible stuff in that period. Was really good and successful in school, though, thank God. Ran a school newspaper and was very popular. Had a lot of friends, boys and girls. Was very happy. Despite all the horrors at home, I was, with the program. International school, felt very much at home. Children from all backgrounds and religions and countries and nationalities. It was great. So then we moved to West Africa. Now, West Africa after Norway, that's a challenge. I was scared of snakes because my mom was scared of snakes. I love all animals, but anyway, I grew up internalizing her fear. Those 1.5 years went from bad to worse. The fighting was worse. It was very unsafe at home. It was all very traumatic. And I got malaria, of course, one could argue from a holistic point of view, because nearly all illness is a manifestation, of your lack of well-being or the trauma you're experiencing. And of course, food, genetics, all that. But for now, let's leave it at that. And of course, mosquitoes. It's like what's that Dalai Lama quote where he says, if you think something small is unimportant, try and spend the night with a mosquito. Excuse me. So anyway, we were in Holland after the first year, and to my horror, I overheard my mother telling my grandmother that she wanted a divorce. So that's how I found out. Long story short, my parents dumped us in a boarding school. And that was when my life went from relatively heavenly to absolute hell. The boarding school was a nightmarish place, very badly managed, completely incompetent staff. I used to joke there was kind of Auschwitz light. And I know you can't joke with that, but I mean, it was horrible. The mental, physical abuse was horrible. The little food we got was absolutely disgusting. And I was one of those children who was bullied. So imagine the shock of being this extroverted, happy-go-lucky, very popular, very amicable boy to completely depressed, totally fearful, scared shitless. All my grades plummeted down to 1 or 0. And I became what is known to be a problem child. One of the reasons I went into the work I do, because there is no such thing as a problem child. There are problematic situations. There are extremely problematic adults. There are extremely incompetent educators, but there is no such thing as a problem child. And like they say in Hawaii, if you get off the track, we just need to help somebody back on track. That's all it is. But in the West, we label and we judge and we compartmentalize, and ideally we pump you full of medicine, put you in, difficult schools. So those 3 years were absolute hell. I became very suicidal. And I'm telling it lightly, but just imagine this bright light, turning into a ghost. And anyway, like Nietzsche says, anything doesn't, kill you makes you stronger. That's definitely true for me. But anyway, in that period, I didn't feel that way at all, and I, tried to commit suicide, and was generally absolutely miserable and very insecure. Um, and in the third year, thank God, I started acting out. So on an energy level, you have um, fear and depression, which is the absolute lowest, and then there's bliss and self-realization, which is the absolute highest. But if you go from fear and depression to anger, you're one step up. So of course, acting out is becoming angry, right? So we started drinking and smoking weed, and school, of course, which was already a disaster, became a complete disaster. Fell in love, went through all kinds of experiences, and got kicked out of boarding school, which was probably saving grace. Anyway, then my insane dad tried to put me into like a boarding school for difficult boys, like a really serious, hardcore, where the criminal kids goes. So thank God I was able to withstand that. And I went back to Norway where I had great memories. But mom had remarried a Norwegian and he was chronically depressed. So there I was at home with this depressed guy and then a happy mother again. So that lasted for 3 years. And at that point, I had so much stress. I had a chronic stomach ulcer. I went on meds for the stomach pain. They not totally knocked me out. So I slept through the first year of university. Oh, by the way, I did really well at school. I graduated with honors. Woohoo! I had only straight A's, or if you count from 1 to 10, I had only nines and tens, best of my class. Um, so it was terrible. I could have gone into any university, in any Ivy League university in the world. And instead, here I slept through Oslo University. Anyway, so then another long story, but I ended up in New York. In New York, I ended up working in the rag trade, was very successful with a friend of mine. We also went completely bankrupt. Then I met this agent who was an agent for Julia Roberts, Eric Roberts, Diane Keaton, Tom Hulse, all these people. And he said, we're going to make you a star. We're going to sign you. And I wanted to act. I said, yay, great. So I went to acting school. And meanwhile, I was married with an American woman and she had left me for various valid and various invalid reasons, but more about that at another point, perhaps. And basically, it felt like the whole thing in New York was kind of over and out, which is insane because the acting teacher in the acting school, I remember at one point, I was sitting there with my acting teacher and with my manager, Bill Tresh. And, I was so insecure. And I said, but what kind of roles am I going to play? And they cracked up. They were lying on the floor, rolling with laughter. They almost peed themselves with laughter. And they said, don't worry, they'll write roles for you. I was like, wow, oh, okay, that's cool. So that's how it works. And you hear that, very often when you watch movies, you're actually watching a movie that was written with a certain actor or actress in mind. So it's a big business. And I always felt I wanted to help people, and I was attracted to the spiritual path without really knowing it. Um, so I said no to this, red carpet acting career, and I went back to Holland, and again back to hell, because I was working in a bar, paying off my debts, that I incurred in the States. In those days, people chain smoked. I'd stand and passive smoke the whole evening. It was disgusting. And the Dutch were then and still are extremely stingy people. So the tipping would be absolutely horrendous. Anyway, managed to do that. Then went to a healing institute, met my first spiritual teachers. And they were like, dude, you've got to change your life. You've got to stop doing the drugs, what have you. And I was like, okay, whatever it takes to be your student. So I became the sorcerer's apprentice. Like in the movies, the sorcerer's apprentice, they do all the horrible work. They clean the fireplace, they're abused, they sleep in a pigsty, they have to do cleaning, they don't get paid, it's menial, they get insulted, they get abused. But you get to hang around with a sorcerer, which I did. So for 3 years, I was surrounded by 3 people who worked there. And it was like there was just this mirror held up for me 24/7. oops, something happened to the light. Okay, bam, back to normal light. Thank you, AI. So there, so that was very tough working on myself. And I learned numerology. I learned astrology. I have numerology videos on my channel, by the way. I'm going to make some more. And I also, got to learn and work on all my shit and heal a lot of my traumas. Then after 3 years there, I decided that, hey, life was calling. There's more to do than to be the sorcerer's apprentice at this healing place. So I decided to study education psychology and psychology because I love kids. I wanted to be a brain surgeon, but wasn't good at math. So I thought I couldn't study medicine. In hindsight, I learned it's fine to study medicine, even if you don't know any math. And besides, with all due respect and excluding, holistic, well-educated doctors, all you learn is medicine. That's why it's called the study of medicine, Anyway, that's why they're called MD, medical doctor, or mafia doctor. So anyway, and again, forgive me for all the wonderful doctors out there. So I did that. Again, I graduated with honors, top of my class. And after that, shortly, when I was 18 in New York, I got interested in Buddhism. I started going to a Zen Buddhist place. My first Buddhist monk teacher, he was always like, so, in the world, two things, visible and invisible. And this is what he talked about, visible and invisible, and he'd elaborate on that. And the interesting thing is, I'm about to come back to that later. So, and then I did Hatha Yoga, and I studied with Swami Satchidananda. And somebody in some point gave me a book on Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. I read it through the night. I cried all night. It was amazingly healing. Yogananda, and I love you dearly. Yogananda is the embodiment of love, and is a very wise soul and a brilliant spiritual teacher. He was actually one who brought yoga to America, and or yoga, Hinduism. Advaita, love for God, united a lot of Christians as well. And so at some point, I heard about Sai Baba, and I was immediately very enamored and very attracted by all the miracles that he does, things we call miracles, which, if you look into quantum mechanics, are all explainable, because Baba says, and I know this, he is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. So if you're everywhere, that means everything is there all the time. So he says, when I think of something and he waves his hand, it materializes. So be it healing ash, be it rings, be it watches, anything and everything, fruit. He even materialized a monkey once, but I know your mind is going to go, that's not possible. But I know my mind is like that too. The mind is the big problem. Swami materialized because he always talks about monkey mind. Our mind is like a mad monkey. It's like, it's chattering away the whole time. So anyway, I found out about Baba and I decided to go and see him. Now, interestingly enough, for those of you who know, Baba always says, look, whether or not you come to his ashram, Puttaparthi in India, in south of India, he says, that is decided by God. And so if you come, you're meant to come. And I know a lot of people who've been wanting to go their whole lives, they can never go. It doesn't work. I don't know why, but there's obviously no green light. So it's, different things for different people. I was interesting enough seeing a video the other day of devotees of Baba Neem Karoli, and two of them incidentally were talking about how they first met Sai Baba and Muktananda, and ended up being with Baba Neem Karoli. So, for everyone, there's a place and a direction. And so that whole spiritual journey was absolutely amazing. Baba is the embodiment of love. And one of the quotes he's known for is that he says, look, I am God. And he says, and you're God. And he says, but I remember and you've forgotten. So I'm here to remind you again. So for those of you who are allergic to the idea of his materializations, he always does it for a reason. He always does it as a talisman or to heal people. And he is the most the embodiment of God in all its glory, in all its forms. And there are many, many, many beautiful books written about Baba. There are thousands of scientists who've gone to India to debunk him. It's funny, right? Debunking God, your creator. And they've all come back and they said, look, all these miracles that happened there, we don't understand them, but we've seen them there for real, you know. So anyway, a lot more about that another time. And so I've been going there last decades, or decades, as my Indian lovely friends love to say. India is kind of my second home. And at some point, a dear friend of mine who we became friends on Facebook, and we met in India, actually is quite the medium and has occasional dreams with Baba. And Baba always says, look, he says, if you dream about me, it's real. You know, it's like it's that dimension manifesting. It's not like an ordinary dream. And in that dream, he very specifically instructed her to tell me to write these books. Now, I'm very skeptical about people who are like, yeah, I've got a message for you. And, you know, like, you know, people channeling. And anyway, I mean, I know there's a lot of good stuff happening with that, but I'm just a healthy skeptic. And anyway, more about that some other time. So I was like, well, and she proceeded to tell me the most amazing details. I've written about that book. He even gave the title. So the book's called A Touch of Gold. So let me just share it with you here. And I'm very, very happy. So it's Touch of Gold. That's yours truly. What does it say? Oh, my miraculous life with an avatar. And it is. I've experienced miraculous things. And I've translated into Dutch, Puur Goud. Mijn wonderbaarlijk leven met een avatar. Yeah, that's the translation. And the books are on Amazon for now. I decided to self-publish with the Kindle Publishing Direct. They're also on my website, which is ericrobertson.nl, for those of you who don't want to go on Amazon. So that is www.ericrobertson, which is ERIKROBERTSON.nl for Netherlands. So there you have it. It's available as an ebook, as softcover, as a beautiful hardcover. And it's my intention that, like I said, that it brings healing to those of you who are out there suffering, and know that you're not alone, and know that there is a way out, and beyond the darkness and beyond all the suffering, there is healing and there is love. And even if you're not a religious person, there's joy and bliss and a sense of gratitude and contentment and acceptance of who you are. So I'm hoping you enjoyed this channel, this video. I am going to pull my little glasses here. I hope that you will feel inspired to buy my book. And I don't know if I should call it my book, because like I said, I was specifically instructed to write it. And if you know people who might need it, you know, let them know, reach out to them. Once again, on Amazon.com or Amazon, any Amazon site. It's called A Touch of Gold by Eric Robertson, My Miraculous Life with an Avatar. And in Dutch, it's called Puur Goud. And it's available on Amazon.nl. So there you have it. Looking forward to the next video. If you have questions or anything you want to talk about, you can email me at info@ericrobertson.nl. So that's info@ericrobertson.nl. So I'm signing off to say thank you so much for allowing me to share this. It's been quite a vulnerable cold plunge bath to just share this out there with the World Wide Web. But hey, you know, all for the good cause, right? So wishing you a great day or a great evening wherever you are. And take care.